noticed over the last few weeks, the readings, particularly the first reading for our weekday masses. A few weeks ago, they were from the wisdom literature of the Old Testament. And then they went to the epistles, to some of the epistles of St. Paul, for example. And now we're back to Proverbs again. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Proverbs and much of the wisdom literature of the Old Testament would be little one or two sentence phrases that are kind of all stacked together in a row, much like the first reading that we had today. They're not necessarily connected by any theme, but there are a lot of independent little wisdom sayings that were collected in these books. And then on the weeks or the days when we will go to the epistles of St. Paul, we find something very different, don't we? Particularly in the Pauline epistles, we find Paul addressing the problems, most recently, of the Corinthians. Specific problems that are going on in the community right here and now. Very practical issues that he is trying to deal with. So we go from wisdom, which are very general statements passed on through the generations, to Paul wrestling with present problems here and now. And I think that there's a beautiful juxtaposition there. As I was reading the book of Proverbs once again, I went to the first edition of the Jerome Biblical Commentary to read the introductory material. And I found two little phrases that I'd like to share with you today that I think help us to understand more deeply the wisdom literature in the Old Testament, particularly the book of Proverbs. The author of this little summary or introductory article says, "Wisdom mediates between God and the world. Wisdom mediates between God and the world. Immanent in creation, she is the source of all meaning about this world. So you find wisdom in dealing with the problems of everyday life, okay? But coming from God, she is also a revelation of God and a call from him to the world. So wisdom stands kind of like on the border. Wisdom gleans what is most instructive from our experiences here on earth, but because wisdom has its source, or her source, if you will, in God, so also showing how this wisdom that we find in dealing with the situations in the world is actually God's wisdom, the Creator's wisdom that he has placed there. So that's a beautiful understanding. Wisdom acts in the big sense the way the human soul acts, coming to wrestling with the problems of everyday life, but the soul also stands at the threshold of God's house and relates to us the wisdom of God. So we gain insight not only into the world, but insight into who God is. And then the author goes on to say, wisdom is not esoteric. In other words, it's not these kind of secret mystical sayings. But wisdom, when you read it, you say, yeah, hey, that makes sense. You know, I'm glad I maybe didn't think of it, but now that I think about this particular situation, yeah, that is the wise thing to do, or that's the wise way to think about this. It's not esoteric. It's not something bizarre. It's not like learning calculus. People who have a lot of education, formal education, or people who have little education can recognize wisdom when they hear it, okay? So wisdom is not esoteric knowledge reserved for the few, but it can be sought by all. And it is found through the difficult process of making well-informed choices. Making well-informed choices in life. Okay? So wisdom relates to very practical choices that need to be made in daily life. Okay? The need to inform train and persuade the young about the right choices is the book's rationale. And if you read the Book of Wisdom, you find out that that's what it claims to be. It's the old people saying to the young people, now here's what was passed on to us, here's what we've learned, now you have to learn this. You know, and the young going, it's all old-fashioned stuff, and the older people saying, no, it's not old-fashioned stuff, it's today's stuff that you need to know to make good choices, okay? Because life's too short, you have to figure it all out for yourself. So two beautiful little descriptions of what wisdom is about at the beginning of the book of Proverbs, that it is a gift to the younger generation from the generations that have reflected upon the difficult choices of life and have come up with some conclusions about it, but have discovered also a wisdom that brings them to the very threshold of God and to the praise of the God who created this world and all its wonders.